Alright, now that we've covered the 1920s, we can move on to the Great Depression. The Great Depression happens for a whole bunch of reasons. We're going to talk about the stock market crash, cultural reactions to the crash in cities and the Dust Bowl area, and the creation of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal. So the reason that the Great Depression happens is because in the 1920s, people are buying lots and lots of things and spending money they don't have. We talked about credit and how that's kind of a buy now, pay later system. So because it was new and it was exciting, people were handing it out and basically loaning money they didn't have to loan and spending money they didn't have to spend. Due to this, people were making lots and lots of things, but once that people started to understand that they didn't have the money to pay back things, they quit buying stuff, so there was a lack of demand for certain products, and there was an overproduction of things. People were making too many items that weren't being bought. There was that excess spending on material items. The stock market crashes in 1929, again because too many loans are being given out, and there's too many payments out there that aren't being received. So our stock market crashes, and that makes businesses crash and people lose their jobs. The Dust Bowl is also happening during this time. It happens in this area here that you can see on the map. It includes Kansas, Colorado, parts of New Mexico, the panhandle of Oklahoma, and part of the panhandle of Texas. Lubbock is right there, right in the middle of it. The Dust Bowl happens because there's a drought and the soil is very dry and it's very overworked. So they're plowing the fields and the soil that's very dry and it gets into the air, and it also causes the topsoil to be very loose, so the wind picks it up very easily and causes lots of dust storms. The Dust Bowl happens between 1931 and ends finally in 1939. Alright, this is the New Deal. This is the answer, or so they believed, to end the Great Depression. It includes a number of various reforms that address the Great Depression catastrophe. They start implementing the New Deal in 1933 and finish finally in 1938. FDR, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, is elected with overwhelming popularity for his campaign promising to create a New Deal. He says for his campaign, he says, I pledge myself to a new deal for the American people. It was very popular because people were very desperate for a savior, for someone to get them out of the situation they were in, and they believed that FDR was that person, so he is elected into office. The New Deal is a trial and error process, so they had to try some things and then they didn't work, and then they had to try again and it didn't work, so it wasn't something that happened perfectly. The first reform that goes with it is the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. This had to do with banks and insuring the money that banks have. So the FDIC, which we just talked about, or I told you the name a second ago, is the response to thousands of bank failures. Again, banks were lending money that they didn't have. The FDIC prevents runs by insuring deposits. So it prevents banks from being able to loan money they don't have by insuring people's deposits, because when you put money in the bank considers it theirs, and they will loan that money out. Now, however, when you go to spend it, it's still yours, but it's kind of a complicated process. So the FDIC insures your money by saying you put it in the bank and we will make sure that it's safe, rather than the bank spending your money when it loans it out. And this strengthens the public's confidence in the financial system. They were gaining faith in banks again, because they were scared before because they lost all their money when the banks were lending out money that actually belonged to them. It's kind of a difficult concept to understand. But basically, the FDIC ensures that the money that you put in the bank is yours and nobody can touch it. The FDIC today will insure your money up to $250,000. It stabilizes and regulates the U.S. financial system still. In 1934, there was no money lost due to bank failure. There are some restrictions. However, there's a little cartoon over here that's asking, Daddy, what does FDIC mean? He said, that's the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, where the United States government protects our money in the bank. Little boy here takes it to be like a piggy bank. So he's named his piggy bank FDIC because it is kind of the same concept. Alright, the New Deal also enacts the National Labor Relations Board. This basically protects employees' rights so that they cannot be treated unfairly by any employer. Its impact was it banned unfair workplace practices. It also allowed workers to form unions, and there was a board to make sure that it was ran correctly. A union is like the middleman between an employee and an employer. So if you have a problem at work and you're part of a union, you can talk to your union, who will then go talk to your boss or the owner of your company. It supported the NLRB supported the rights for unions and the right to organize them. It helped with safety, work schedules, and compensation, which is your pay. So those are the things that the NLRB focused on as far as making your workplace safe to work in. Today, they have an orderly system for enforcing workers' rights. They investigate unfair practices in businesses. There's a 5-person board with a general counsel, which is by appointment. They protect your right to speak online without fear. Okay? You're allowed to discuss your boss or your manager online without fear of losing your job. You're also allowed to complain of unfair treatment online without losing your job. Those are the things that the NLRB focuses on today. The New Deal also invented Social Security. You've probably heard about this before, and I'm going to give you a little bit more information about it. It is an act that provides general welfare by establishing a system of federal old age benefits and by enabling the several states to make more adequate provision for aged persons, blind persons, dependent and crippled children, maternal and child welfare, public health, and the administration of their unemployment compensation laws. To establish a Social Security board to raise revenue and for other purposes. It's kind of some big language there. The Social Security Act was put in place in 1935. Social Security was previously a family or local issue. It didn't have anything to do with the government. Opponents of the Social Security Act stated that it would hurt jobs that were currently there. The Social Security Act was not applied to women or minorities or those who were self-employed, but it allowed the elderly to be able to be self-sufficient. FDR gives us a quote here from 1941 on why Social Security is taken from payroll checks. So when you're paid, they take a portion of your check and put it towards Social Security. He said, "We put those payroll contributions there so as to give the contributors, those being paid, a legal, moral, and political right to collect their pensions and their unemployment benefits. With those taxes in there, no politician can ever scrap my Social Security program." So he's basically saying, we take taxes out of your check so that you have a right to collect money if you're unemployed or when you retire. He's saying by making those taxes there, a politician will never be able to get rid of the Social Security program because it's paid for by the people it's given to. Today, Social Security includes life and disability insurance. The elderly are out of poverty. There is yearly inflation. 2/3 of most income of the elderly come from Social Security. It does affect children. In 2011, it affected 1.1 million children and 14 million elderly people in the United States. There should be enough money to continue Social Security until 2033. So you can hear my dogs in the background. But that wraps up the Great Depression. Again, it was a pretty terrible time. People didn't have money, they didn't have food, they lost their homes, all because they spent so much money and were so careless with their money in the 1920s. So when people talk about the cause of the Great Depression, in reality, the 1920s were the cause of the Great Depression, and luckily Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected as our president, and he was able to come and save the day. So there's another video on here that has a song that might help you remember and understand the Great Depression a little bit more, so I encourage you to watch that.